Aloha anglers, Creaky Tiki here, talking knots and connections to your terminal tackle. For many years, I found myself relying on two basic knots to tie my terminal tackle, whether jig, hook, swivel, whatever. For line up to 60-pound test, I was tying the Palomar knot, and for anything over 60-pound test, I settled in on a knot taught to me by Captain Norm Kagawa, owner and former captain of the Shogun. I call it the three-turn Norm thumb knot, or the double three-turn Norm thumb knot. Now, these knots work very, very well. They're very strong. We're very consistent. But as I've shifted over to fishing with braid and either a very short leader on the lighter weight braid or wind on leader on the heavier braid, I found that those knots just ate up those leaders really quickly when you were retying. If you're changing hooks, changing jigs, or retying after a fish, or you had a fray in one of them from a tangle, man, I was going through fluoro like no tomorrow. So I was looking for a knot that would still give me the strength and consistency, but wouldn't be so aggressive in eating up my fluoro leaders and making me change those out. Well, I found a knot that works really well for me. Now, before I get started, there are a lot of great fishing knots out there, and this is not a knock on any of those. If you like those knots, keep using them. If you don't have a reason to change, don't change. But for me, I found one that I can rely on, that's simple, quick to tie, that's very consistent, and that uses very, very little of my leader material. It's called the Spangler knot. It's a little different than the Springer knot that you might have heard of, but the Spangler for me has been very consistent. Well, I wanted to find out exactly how strong it really is, so I built myself a little home testing machine, similar in some ways to what you see at the fishing tackle shows. Okay, it has a tower where I can attach the line. It has an electronic tensionometer that tells the stress you're putting on. I'll tell you what pound pressure the line breaks at. Has a lever for pulling down. Got it all set up. So I started testing the Spangler knot against my favorite knots and against one of the all-time favorites, the San Diego jam knot. Now, this isn't 100,000% scientifically pinpoint accurate, but I was getting pretty consistent results. And what it showed me was the Spangler was just as strong, relatively as strong as the San Diego jam and as the Palomar, just as consistent if tied properly, and it ate up very little of my leader material. I also found that I could tie it really quickly when I needed to. All I needed was some type of hook to put the jig or the hook on to get that Spangler tied. So after a series of tests, here's where I ended up with. What I was tying them with was with 30-pound test, 3X Iser mono, actually super copolymer mono. So 3X Iser super copolymer 30-pound test. Here's the final results after a lot of testing. Okay, the Iser line 3X broke at a little over 43 pounds. 30-pound test line broke at 43.3 pounds. The Palomar knot broke at 40.77. The San Diego jam knot in a couple of tests broke right at 40, 39.16. And the Spangler, 40.68. Okay, so virtually the same breaking strength for all of those knots. Now, let me show you how this Spangler is tied, and you can decide if it's something you want to try for you. The Spangler, the way I learned to tie it, is basically 4 loops, okay? It's 4-loop knot. So what you do is you take the line and kind of like a pistol grip, you grip the line in your back couple of fingers and between your thumb and forefinger here, okay? You're just going to make 4 loops, and I like it if you make all of the loops in the upward direction here. So here's a ring that simulates the ring on the hook, okay? You pass it upward once. You make 1 loop up through. You're going to loop all the loops around this finger right here. So 1 loop up and through. A 2nd loop up and through. Now we've got a double wrap on the hook, ring, or jig, whatever we're tying, okay? A double loop. Now we're going to make a 3rd loop, but it's going to come up through the first 2. So the 3rd loop is through those first 2. And then the 4th loop is going to be through all 3 of those loops. It goes around and through all of those. If I can get it here, this piece of rope, okay. There it is. So 4 loops. Hold the tag end. You're going to loop it up, of course, and then you can pull it down and secure that knot. Now, there's only a couple things you got to remember when you're tying this knot. The first one is you have to cinch the main line, and you have to use your pliers to cinch that tag end. Okay? Cinch the tag and the main line, and then check and make sure that the 2 wraps are parallel. Every once in a blue moon, those will cross, and if they cross, you're going to have a very weak knot. But I found if you pull it down by just holding the tag end and doing most of pulling with the main line, you rarely, if ever, will get a crossover. So if those aren't crossed, you've cinched that tag end, you've got a knot that's just as strong as a San Diego, just as strong as a Palomar. I'm going to tie it here with some 130 fluoro so you can see how it pulls down and see how easy it is to save some of your line. Okay, so here we are at the 130 fluoro. Same thing, I got the fluoro in my hand. Okay, loop 1 through the ring, loop 2 through the ring, loop 3 through the first 2 loops, and loop 4 through all 3 loops, around everything and through all 3 loops. Now, if I lube this up, hold that tag in close, I can pull all of that slack through that knot except the very tag end. Remember, you got to cinch that tag tight. And you can see that I've got 2 parallel strands. It's a small, compact knot. It's quick to tie once you get used to it, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful knot for all weights of line. I haven't found any difference no matter what weight of line I put in the puller here to test it. Now, one thing that I want to point out is when you're tying knots on a knot machine, you're tying around a big ring like this. I did all of my tests on a hooked ring, okay, so that what I was doing simulated real world conditions. A lot of strength of that knot, all right, comes from the wraps around the ring or around the eye of the jig or the hook. That gives it resistance, gives it friction, and gives it resistance. When I'm pulling line tests, I want to make sure that I'm pulling against something real world. So I use an actual hook. I just clip the tip off of it to make it a little safer. But I'm tying it around the rings in the hook or the eye of the hook to make sure that I'm simulating as much as I can real world conditions. And those real world conditions are telling me that the Spangler is a very good knot. It's a fluoro saving knot. It's a quick, easy knot. It's one that you might want to give a try and see. Just follow those instructions. It's 4 loops, 2 through the eye or the ring, 1 through the first 2 loops, and the last one through all the loops. Make sure you cinch that tag end, make sure you set the knot, and make sure you don't have a crossover where it goes through the eye or the ring of your terminal tackle. Well, that's it for this one. Again, I hope you have a great fishing season. Hope you get out there and get some good ones. Till next time, Creaky out.